Hey guys, it's Sunray, and welcome back to the My So-Called Thoughts podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope you're well, and again, thank you for listening. Here we are, episode 10. Episode 10. I cannot believe that I am 10 episodes in. Like, this is crazy, but this is awesome, and I'm really enjoying myself. And I hope to those who are listening, I hope you are, of course, enjoying the podcast. But if you don't know who I am, I'm Sunray. I'm a wife, mama, and musician. I feel like I say that every episode, but hey, I got to tell you a little bit about myself. That is who I am. And I really started this podcast because I love talking. I love talking with other people. I love talking about things that I feel like nobody ever likes to talk about, that nobody, like, just like the nitty gritty, that like I feel like we're all sometimes like thinking stuff, but like we don't have conversations about it. We don't talk about it. We don't go over it. So I like to unpack it here and, just talk about life, talk about the things that we're thinking about, things that we're healing from, things that we're dealing with, all that good stuff. Of course, want to go ahead and say that the podcast, if you didn't know, is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and Anchor. Please, of course, leave a review, leave a comment, or subscribe to your platform of choice. I really appreciate that, and that really helps. So thank you so much. And also share with your family and friends if you have one episode that really resonated with you, or that you really liked, or just the whole podcast in general. Feel free to share with your family and friends. I really appreciate it, and I'm super thankful for everyone that has tuned in and everyone that has listened thus far. So, if you've listened before, or whether or not it's your first time listening, I'd like to just jump right in. I don't like to waste any time when it comes to talking about a topic that we're going to be talking about. I want to talk about like the truth of being an introvert, the reality of being an introvert, and what it's like being an introvert. I feel like, I mean, obviously in society, we have like these societal terms like introvert and extrovert. I've even heard of the term ambivert. And if you're like, what the heck is that? And ambivert is supposed to be like a combination of the two. Or like if you've heard of, I believe it's like the Myers-Briggs test, where you get like your 4 letters defining if you're an introvert or extrovert. I remember I took it like years ago in college. I don't even remember what I got. I kind of want to take it again, just to see, just to kind of see what I would get. So I'm not sure. I think I will take it, and at some point, just for fun. I probably should have took it before this, but hey, I know who I am. Okay. So let's start talking about it. So obviously, if you didn't guess, I would definitely consider myself an introvert. I would in no way, shape, or form consider myself an extrovert. But I just want to kind of talk about what it's like being an introvert. And, if you are an introvert, I just want to unpack it, because I feel like there's so much stuff that, I mean, obviously, I'm sure extroverts deal with a lot of stuff, but I feel like there's a lot of thinking and anxieties and different things that introverts experience, or just if you're going through a stage of in your life where you're dealing with a lot of like introversion, I feel like there's just a lot there, and I want to talk about it. And also, if you didn't know, I've mentioned this on previous podcasts. I have a background in psychology. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology. So this stuff is really interesting to me, and I like to talk about it. So I just kind of want to, just dive in and kind of unpack. It's something that I deal with on a daily basis. And I feel like now that I'm older, I deal with it even more so on a daily basis, which is kind of interesting. I'm always thinking about it. I'm always like playing it over in my mind. And there are some aspects of being an introvert that I feel like impact my daily life. And with that, like there's great things, right? But then there's also like a lot of challenges, and that's kind of what I want to talk about when it comes to it, because it's just something I've been thinking about lately, and you'll hear why shortly later once we just continue to talk about this. So I kind of want to share like how I grew up and kind of how I've evolved in my introversion, As a kid, I was always, super shy. I always kept to myself. I like never talked. In one of my previous podcasts, I talked about the Growing Up Tribalist, which if you haven't checked it out, please check it out. It is a very personal podcast and very personal to me. So if you haven't checked it out, please, it's very good. It's not, I don't mean to like side tangent, but it's, I know that the reason why I put a vague title on that podcast is because I didn't want anyone to tune in because I know this sounds so stupid. You may be like marketing, why not put a title, you know what I'm saying, to draw people in. But I feel like I wanted to leave it a little vague and was like growing up tribalist. Like, what does that mean? I don't know. I just feel like I feel like if you listen to the podcast, you'll know like, oh, I could have totally named that something else. But I didn't want to because I don't know. I feel like there's just a certain way that I want people to tune into my podcast. I don't know. That was a totally random tangent. I don't care, whatever. But anyway, on that podcast, I talked about how kids in school would always ask me like, "Why don't you talk?" I heard that if I had a $10 bill for every time I got asked that, I would have a lot of $10 bills. But I would get asked that question all the time, and I remember like literally telling people like, or telling the kids like, I don't have anything to say. I don't have anything to say. And I would never speak up for myself. I did have a small group of friends. Like that is one thing I could say I'm super thankful for. I had some friends at school. Unfortunately, later in high school, I drifted away from them. It's just kind of happened naturally. But I did have like I had like a core group of friends that I had at my church, and I'm super thankful for them. And like, but if I didn't have them, I don't know if I would have any friends because I was so shy. And obviously, just meeting them through like mutual clubs and classes and things like that, and mutual like groups like dance and things. But I can say that I feel like it's easier to make friends when you're a kid. Like I just mentioned, you'll have classes, you'll have dance practice, you'll have art club, student council, you have like all these different activities. And when you're a kid, there's not many barriers that are keeping you from being friends, like where you live or your job or children, having kids, or, just being married, which being married doesn't keep you away from like making friends. But obviously when you're married, you may have certain responsibilities as a wife or a husband that you would have to tend to, meaning like, oh, I have to go pick up my wife from work, or, oh, just different things, when you have, different obligations and stuff. And you make these friends because of like mutual things that you enjoy and mutual desires. And I am thankful that I had those friends because of that, and I was able to develop friends because I was in different groups, and I was in dance at church and choir and all that type of stuff, and art club and student council at school. But all in all, like I typically kept to myself. If my friends like were out sick or something and didn't come to school, I was alone that day. I didn't talk to anybody. I was quiet at lunch, without like my friends and the people that I had opened up to and I was super close with. I was like a turtle in a shell. Like I kept to myself. I was too shy. Like I was always like, if you are my friend listening to this, you know that like I can be very silly, very goofy, very just very outspoken, but it's it has to be within my friends. It has to be within whoever I'm comfortable with. And I'll get into this a little bit later, but like the friendships that I have that I'm comfortable with, I've been friends with them for like over a decade. So obviously there's a lot of time that comes with like the comfortability and stuff. But when you're a kid, I feel like it also like it impacts you obviously if you don't have friends, but I just feel like as an adult, there's like just a whole new level of how it impacts you. When I was in elementary school, like I said, I didn't branch out. I didn't really talk to anyone. I was super shy, kept to myself, had my couple friends. This was before I met my friends at church, and I had a couple friends at school, but that was it. I didn't talk to anybody. I never wanted to speak up or speak out or anything. I just was super shy. And, we're so innocent as children, you know what I mean? Because it's just like, oh, I'm shy. I don't want to talk to anybody. Not a big deal, right? Which rightfully so. But again, it's just interesting how that can start to impact you as you get older, especially in your teenage years. When I got to middle school, I was kind of sick of being shy because I just felt like you watch the TV shows, you watch Disney Channel and you watch Nickelodeon, you watch all this stuff. And I'm like, oh, I want to be outgoing like that person I like see on TV and stuff like that. Or just I want to make more friends. And I felt like I wanted to like try to step out of the box more. When I was growing up, and I was becoming a preteen and like, later like a teenager. I wanted to be like all the popular girls that you saw on TV. I wanted everyone to like me, all that type of stuff, right? So I found myself trying and attempting to be outspoken, like to everybody, not just like my innermost friends that like I was very, very close with, but just to everybody, you know what I mean? And it's funny because whoever that was coming, out of who, like out of me when I was trying to, you know, be outspoken and stuff, it wasn't the real me in any way, shape, or form. And because of that, it got me in trouble a lot. When it came to friendships, like not in school or different things, it got me in trouble with other kids in different situations. Um, I was naturally timid. I was naturally quiet, and I was trying to be the opposite. So I would say stupid stuff. Oh my God. Like I would say stupid stuff and I would get made fun of because of it. And I would be so outspoken. I was like trying so hard not to be myself, and I would be talking about things that like I shouldn't have been talking about and like shouldn't have been commenting on. Now, obviously, if you're in America, freedom of speech, right? Even as a kid, you could say whatever you want. But it's just some, like, as an adult, you learn, like, okay, there's just some things that, like, okay, like, you don't have to comment on that or you shouldn't say that. There's just certain things you do and don't do, just either out of respect for people or it's just not appropriate as far as like the timing and things like that. I remember there was a time in seventh grade where I was at cheerleading practice. One thing I will say about, I was really shy and introverted, but I was a very creative child. And there were certain things that I was confident in, although I was shy. I had done cheerleading prior to middle school and won championships and like stuff like that. I was a dancer. I was very creative, musically inclined, all that type of stuff. So I did always go out for that, even though I was shy. I still did it, and I don't know how like I got past that part, but I don't know. I would still go to auditions and I would do it because I loved it that much that it was like the one part of me when I was a kid that I would push past. I would push past that shyness for that because I really enjoyed it. But anyway, I was in seventh grade. I was at cheerleading practice, and like I guess I feel like that's how I expressed myself was through like creative arts and stuff. But anyway, one of the popular girls didn't come to practice. I remember I was in the bathroom like changing for practice after school or something, and I remember like kids were still like leaving and getting on the buses and stuff, and I remember I heard her saying like I was in the stall changing, getting ready for practice, and I remember I think I heard her saying that she was going to skip and she was going to skip practice and go somewhere else or do something with her friends. And she was in 8th grade, so she was older than me. So when practice came, our coach asked where she was. And lo and behold, I opened my stupid big mouth because I was trying to be outspoken and trying to be a know-it-all and all that type of stuff. And I said that she wasn't coming. And for some reason in my mind, I would think in times where like nobody was talking, like, oh, I should speak up. This is my time to shine. This is my time to show that I'm not shy. I'm not introverted, blah, blah, blah. Someone will hear me finally, since I'm so quiet. And, I don't know if this makes sense to anyone who has ever been through this because it's so stupid. But again, I was a kid. I was naive. I didn't know any better. At this time, I was probably like 12, 13 years old. And word got out that I said that. And I remember she was so mad. She got in my face and she just pretty much told me off one day. And I remember was so like she didn't have me in like a physical corner or anything, but like mentally I just felt in a corner. I felt I was so embarrassed. I was like, why did I say that? And stuff like this would happen. Like I would speak up in times where again, like there's no reason why I needed to say that. You know what I mean? Like if she wanted to do that, that was on her. Again, I was trying so hard not to be shy. And then and what would always happen is somebody who was more outspoken or like I guess you could say like quote unquote louder than I was, would always come and shut me down, always come and overpower me. And I would go back into my little turtle shell because again, it just wasn't who I was as far as like that time in my life. Um, And, like I said, being the introvert I was, I would just crawl back into my little hole, my little turtle shell. And, it's hard being a kid, being introverted, because there's this pressure. Well, I wouldn't even say like a kid. Like, obviously, well, if you're a teenager, you are a kid. But I feel like it could be really hard as a teenager or early teenager, because there's this pressure to fit in, to impress, to be popular, to be well liked, like all this stuff. It isn't easy because of that. And you naturally want those things. You want to be seen. You want people to know who you are. You're going through puberty and all these changes, and all of a sudden you're wearing pigtails, but oh, now I want to wear a ponytail. I'm talking about as far as girls, and things will just change and stuff, and it's hard. And like I mentioned, stuff like that would happen. That wasn't the only time, it happened. Again, I was trying so hard to step out of my box, and it would just always crash and burn. I was always opening my mouth in like less than desirable times, and it literally cost me friendships. It was never anything severe, but again, I was trying so hard to like be liked and accepted by everybody that like it's like I wasn't like a different person every time. And I'm talking about strictly middle school. I mean, it wasn't like I was a different person with everybody, but it was like I was trying to impress everybody, and I did whatever I had to do. I said whatever I had to say. So that would ended up just, biting me in the butt. And, because of that. But eventually, I got to high school. I tried again to reinvent myself, because I said, I'm not going to repeat middle school. I'm not going to lose friendships that I ended up regaining. We would reconcile and stuff, because of my big mouth. Like, I'm going to be mature, all that type of stuff. Again, trying not to be shy and introverted. I'm trying to make new friends, because one thing about my high school that I went to, as far as like the town that I went to school in, there were like multiple middle schools, and obviously depending on like where you lived, you would go to a certain one. And same with like elementary. So a lot of the kids that I grew up with at like elementary, middle school, it was all the same kids, and I was ready to meet new people. And this high school was kind of a collective of all the middle schools. So I was excited. I'm like, ooh, I'm going to meet some new friends. This is going to be cool. And, I'm meeting new people. Eventually, I got my first boyfriend when I was a freshman. I'm not even going to talk about that toxic relationship. Okay, maybe another podcast. I say that all the time. Broken record. I don't know. I'll probably do a podcast about relationships at some point. But all I'll say was that he was one of those louder voices that I was talking about, that like I would want to be outspoken, but if someone was louder than me, I would cower back into my little turtle shell. And I ended up not making many friends because of him. But ugh, again, maybe another day I'll talk about that. But after him, I was trying to find myself again because that relationship was done. And again, and I kind of took this new approach of like, okay, I don't want to be shy, introverted. I need to make friends. I need to meet people. I want to talk to cute boys. And at this point, like I said, I'm in high school. I'm like 16, 17 years old. I want to be silly. I want to be funny. So at this point, I started to get more and more involved at my church. And, because I was super comfortable there, because I had been going there for so long, and I had been in dance and in choir, and, just a bunch of things I was involved with there. Like, I felt like I began to show myself more to people and be more open. And for this, so in regards to people like I wasn't friends with, I would, again, like I mentioned earlier, I was always super fun and like outspoken with like my innermost friends, but it was only with them and like family, and that's it. But talking to a stranger, talking to someone I didn't know, was like completely impossible for me. So unfortunately, this like silly and funny Ray, it made people think that I was stupid and an airhead. I was always trying to be like silly and funny, that people thought that I was like slow. And, when in reality, I wasn't. Like, I was very smart. Like, I was in AP classes, I was straight A's. Like, I was, it just wasn't who I was. Again, it was coming across as something else because I was trying to be well liked. Even though I started opening myself up more because I was very comfortable at my church, again, like I still was trying to be well liked. I didn't want to be introverted. I didn't want to be shy and stuck in a hole, stuck in a shell. So once again, we have an introvert who is trying so hard to be extroverted with people that they're not close to, and it just ends up coming off as something else again. And that's because it's not natural. And I know that obviously everyone has a different experience, whether you consider yourself an introvert, extrovert, ambivert, whatever. Like, this is just my experience, but I feel like just some of the tendencies of being an introvert, like what I'm talking about, like, I feel like other people can, relate to it. So I was like, okay, whenever I think of a topic, I'm always like, what is the definition? What is it classified as? I want to make sure that I know what I'm talking about. So, I saw like a paraphrased version, definition of introvert, and it said, an introvert is a person with qualities of a personality type known as introversion, which means that they feel more comfortable focusing on their inner thoughts and ideas rather than what's happening externally. And when I read that, I was like, okay, this is me all day. Because, like I said before, I wasn't too nervous to go out for cheerleading or different things or dance, stuff like that, because that was something that was important to me. Like, again, my inner thoughts and ideas, rather than what was going on, like, externally, like wanting to be the most liked person and the popular person. Like, those things didn't come naturally to me. So when I read this, I was like, okay, well, sometimes it isn't just about being shy and being quiet, and I'll get into that soon. But I read that and I was like, this is me all day. But back to kind of like the timeline. Eventually I graduated high school, got to college, and I straight up went back into my shell. That whole like me, and you may say, well, oh, you're putting on a front. And I wouldn't even say that it was a front. It was more so like I was trying so hard, like in high school and middle school, to like step outside the box and do different things. And because it wasn't natural for me, it isn't who I am, that, it was difficult and stuff like that. So that whenever I would have a change, like going from middle school or high school or college, I feel like I would kind of backtrack, because the truth is that you always go back to who you are, and that's just the truth. So when I got to college, I went back in my shell. I had no friends in college. Like, have people like, oh yeah, I got friends. Nope, I don't have any. I do have a few like people that like I went to college with, that I had to do group projects with, were in my classes, stuff like that, that, I could name a couple off the top of my head, that I have on Facebook and different things, and Instagram. But like, I have no friends from college. And like I said, I went to college for 4.5 years, because I went an extra semester, so that because I had to, in order to finish my degree. But I didn't go to Weighted College. My first year of college, I was at one school, but I was still commuting from home. And then I transferred from that college because it wasn't too far away. It was like, but ugh, I like I don't want to go into my college story because I talked about that like on a previous podcast. But all in all, I went to one college for 1 year, and then I transferred to another college that was closer to home. But I was living at home the whole time for both. And I didn't live in a dorm, so I didn't have like roommates or anything like that. And the reason why I lived at home was, especially when I went to the second college that I went to, that I ended up graduating from, it was 15 minutes from home. Like, I could have lived in the dorm, but why? You know what I mean? Financially, it just made sense to live at home. And I didn't live in the dorms. I didn't go to any college parties, like none of that. And obviously, when I was in college, I was in a serious committed relationship with my boyfriend at the time, who was my now husband. So obviously, going out and wilding out and doing different things wasn't appealing to me, because I was already in a relationship with my best friend, who I wanted to eventually marry. And lo and behold, we got married. But I had no desire to party, to do any of that type of stuff, just absolutely nothing. I had no desire to make friends, no desire, just not, no desire, you know? And, all I wanted to do was like be home or like at my boyfriend's house where we would watch like Stranger Things when it first came out. And I remember going through this time period where I felt really bad about that. At this point, as far as like close friends, I had my three besties that I had been friends with for over a decade from church. But at this time, we were all at different walks of life, different schools. We always went to different schools. Different schools, different colleges, different jobs. We did not live in the same city, so it was it wasn't always easy to hang out or spend time together. So I was really lonely outside of having my boyfriend, who's now my husband. I desired community, but like I had no desire to make the effort, and I'll get into that in a moment. But I feel like nobody talks about like how hard that is and how much of like an internal conflict you can have as an introvert, because I feel like as humans, we eventually will desire and want community because the truth is we're designed that way. We're designed to be in community. But introverts, there's like this internal battle that we can experience because we like keeping to ourselves. We like being alone in our own thoughts and ideas, like I mentioned earlier, staying to ourselves and kind of watching things from afar, but we still have that internal desire to not be alone because nobody wants to be alone, right? You know, in my opinion, introverts thrive and like get restored by spending time alone. I know that I do. And I've talked to other people that are the same way. We enjoy other people and being around friends and family and stuff like that, but we rather sit and like watch the kind of like the sidelines. And in some cases, I know that may be different for some people. I would rather, like after like a big family event or like after like a party, I'm like, oh my God, I need to go crawl into a hole. Like I need to recharge. That's just typically how I feel. And I've talked to other people that feel the same way. I remember I got this job in college. It was like my first real job. And I've talked about it on a previous podcast. And I wanted to make friends because I was like, oh, okay, like first real job. This is a way to make friends. Hello. I'm not making friends in college, at my school. So why not make friends at work? And I was friendly to other people. And by this time, I'm an adult. I was like 20 years old, 20 or 21. I can't remember. I believe I was 20, like going on 21, something like that. And, I feel like at this point in my life, I had matured and I had like established the ability to be able to speak up for myself if I needed to. And I feel like that could have just came from different life experiences. Just different things I was involved in with my church that kind of encouraged me to speak when necessary and appropriate, right? And then also just things in college, you would have to do these big presentations and do all this type of stuff, which it's weird because I don't mean to have a side tangent. I hate public speaking, but it was something I was always good at. Like when I would have to speak and do different things, college or church, whatever, it wasn't my favorite thing to do, but I was good at it. And people would tell me that, and I'm like, I don't like this. And you say, well, you're public speaking right now. Okay, no, I am sitting on my couch with a microphone, okay, in my leggings and my t-shirt, and I'm sitting here by myself, okay? That's different than public speaking. And another side tangent, they always say that public speaking is the number one fear, but whatever. But again, back to this job. Again, I said I feel like I had finally established the ability to at least speak, up when necessary and stuff. And I feel like that came from after that toxic relationship I said that I had in high school, where I had my ex-boyfriend was very verbally and mentally abusive. And after that, like I promised myself I would never let anyone step all over me again. Like I was never going to be afraid to speak up for myself and like stand up to somebody and be like, no, you're not going to da 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 da. So again, another podcast for another day. But, I wanted to make friends at this job, and it was hard because I was afraid to let anyone in. Making friends and putting myself out there, it just felt like a chore. I gotta be honest. It felt like a straight up chore. It felt like work. I'm like, oh, I have to sit here and try to make a friend. I know there's some introverts out there that I know you got to be resonating with this, right? I'm just like, oh, I have to try. That'll take forever. I'm thinking in the back of my mind, I got my three besties, my friends for over a decade. Like all that time and hard work and building trust and having friendships and finding things in common, all those years, and now I have to try again. It sounds horrible. It sounds horrible. And I didn't think that, these exact words at the time that I'm saying now, but it's basically how I felt like looking back. I could never see it through. I was never able to gravitate towards developing a new friend outside the ones I already had. I was never able to develop a new friend, trust anyone, right? Like allow myself to be vulnerable. I just couldn't do it. I want to dial it back. And I mentioned a few moments ago that I was going to talk about this. About 2 times post high school while I was in college where I actually did try. I did mention this before because I wanted to finish my thought and I said I would come back to this. And I wanted to get my point across. But actually, one of them was in high school, one of them was in college. My bad. I had to think about that for a second. I tried being friends with this girl in high school. There was a group of people that I was, like I said, I have my 3 besties, but there was a group of people that I befriended at my church. Our friendship it was good. It was fun. We were in like same type of involvement at church. But I will say the friendship wasn't like deep enough, meaning like I wouldn't like tell them secrets and like stuff like that and like fully let them in. Like we would just hang out after practices and stuff from, being involved at church and stuff like that. And they're great. I love them. I just can definitely say I did not let my wall down. The only person that I made, and my now husband was in that group. He's the only person I had like fully let my guard down. Like he knows everything about me. He knows everything there is to know. He was, and we were best friends before we became boyfriend and girlfriend, before we got married. He was the only person. So I will say, now that I think about it, okay, I guess he's the only person that it actually like worked for. He's the last person that it worked for, and I'll get into that later as well. But this girl was in high school. She was a part of that collective and a part of that group. We're all involved in the same things at church. And, we became besties. We started hanging out. We started talking, texting all the time. And I thought that we were tight. Now, I thought that we would eventually get to the point where we would start sharing secrets and start opening up and stuff like that, like really building a foundation for friendship. Like I could see like, oh, I think she could be a really good friend of mine. But she had so much drama around her, and she would bring me into her drama. And I feel like, okay, if you have your own stuff going on, I feel like there's just a way to deal with it. And I know we were in high school, but like we weren't like super young. We were like 18 or like 17, 18 years old. So like there's a level of understanding of how to handle certain situations, right? And she just always brought me into her drama, and she didn't treat me like a real friend. Like our friendship was always on and off, and it wasn't because of anything I was doing. It just was however she was feeling during that time period. And we ended up not being friends anymore. I don't know if I'll ever share that story because that's another. I feel like I have all these crazy stories. But anyway, so that happened there. Another time where I really tried, was in college. I tried befriending someone at my church. I just knew her because she was kind of like a mutual friend. She was kind of involved. Like I was involved with the youth ministry. She was somewhat involved, not whatever. And I feel like I tried to be friends. I tried so hard. Like, this was me again. I was stepping out of my box. I was like, I'm in college. I got to make friends. I don't have friends. Well, I mean, I had my sisters, my besties, but I wanted to just make more friends. I felt really isolated. And I tried, I gave the effort, and I'm not going to give too much details because I don't want anyone to figure out who it is, just in case someone listens to it. I wasn't good enough. Like, that's my personal opinion. I was not good enough to be her friend, and I'm just gonna leave it at there because I don't want to give too much information. But like I said, I feel like the only person during, like, you know, in college and like post all of that I was able to really let my guard down is like my now husband. He's kind of the only one besides, the friends I already had. And I felt like after those occasions, maybe it was just me, but like making friends, it just felt like a chore. Now that I think, there was another situation, there was a girl at my job where I thought we could be friends. And the truth is there's no reason why we couldn't be. I was just so afraid to open up to her. I bet you that to this day we could have been like really good friends. I really liked her. She was cool. We had a lot of common interests. We agreed on a lot of stuff, but I was too scared to let her in. So, like, you see another instance of like just going through all these different things where you try and you, like Cole would try your best, but you don't succeed. It felt like a chore. I was scared to let that person in because it was never working out for me. I felt like I was always trying and trying. And I feel like this can happen a lot, as an introvert. Like, I feel like as introverts, we try twice as hard to make friends. And when it doesn't happen, we get discouraged because we struggle to want to put in the effort in the first place. You know what I mean? It's already hard enough. So then when we fail, it's like, oh, well, I should have just stayed to myself, right? And we try twice as hard because we may or may not be shy, timid, or we truly value our time to ourselves. I know this sounds bad, but I remember thinking to myself, like, okay, I'm busy with work, I'm busy with college. I see my girlfriends, my sisters, I call my sisters when I can. I'm in a relationship and I try to spend time with family. How am I going to have time for another friend? Isn't that horrible? It sounds terrible, but like, I want to be honest. I know that there are some introverts out there that can resonate with this. So I want to talk about it. Again, it felt like a chore. It felt impossible because the times where I did try, there were failures, right? Now, that's just my experience. But again, I know that there's somebody out there that has had to have these feelings. I know I'm not crazy. I don't think so. And when we do try to be extroverted or we try to put ourselves out there, we try to be outspoken, whatever, and it doesn't work out, we just crawl back into our little shell. We stay to ourselves and it's like, oh, I'm better off alone. I'm better off, by myself. I'm better off just in my little turtle shell. So after that first job in college, I got a different job, and I absolutely loved this job. I talked about it in other podcasts, but this job made me and forced me to be extroverted because that was the job. And I knew what I was getting myself into. Like, I was not naive. I knew what I was getting myself into. I was like, okay, well, this is the reality of the job, but I believed in what the company stood for, and I liked it and all that type of stuff. So I said I'm gonna go for it. Got the job. Was happy. I had to interact with people, many people, on a daily basis. I had to be approachable. I had to start conversations, end conversations, guide the conversation. I had to do all of that, and it was really hard. It was always hard for me, just to be honest. Especially there was a point in my career with the company where I had to call customers over the phone, and every call, every time I did it, I sweated a little bit. I had to take a deep breath and I had to like wish the anxiety away because that was just the reality for me. I had to get over my fears, obviously, and I had to just deal with it because it was my job. I didn't have a choice. But I feel like this job also kind of helped me to be outspoken, like when I need to be. And, I got better at just faking it until I made it. And, when it came down to, speaking out and stuff and sharing my thoughts and ideas. I was faking till I make it, but I feel like this job helped me to at least be able to start it on my own and to be able to like start conversations and stuff like that. And I just think that that's a skill. I don't like, I feel like it's related to being like introverted, but I also think it's a skill. And it was just a skill that I was able to perfect over time because I had to, I didn't have a choice, even though I didn't. I think it's more about you wanting to do it versus you being able to do it, right? Just kind of like how I said, I hated public speaking. I didn't want to do it, but I was somehow good at it. It was a skill that I had that I was good at, but I didn't want to do it, and I feel like that job really helped me develop the skill to do, this type of stuff that I'm talking about. And it was helpful as far as like growing an adult, having two adults, doing adulting things and dealing with certain situations. Like, even though I'm still very, naturally introverted, I feel like that job, gave me the skill to step out of the box in very, very important times, like when I needed to. Like, if I need to call insurance or I need to do different stuff. Like, I hate it, but it's like, okay, I have the skill. I know how to do it. I know how to talk. Because I was all literally, my job was talking. Well, it wasn't like the main job, but like I had to talk to people all day at this job, and unlike middle school, I knew how to speak clearly and speak the right things and stuff like that. And I would definitely, I don't know if this is good advice or not, but I would recommend to anyone, if you are introverted and you kind of want to like just get better at that talking skill and speaking with people, maybe look into like a job or getting involved or volunteering or just something that can help you step out of that box. If you're like, look, I am introverted, I like being in myself, but I want to learn how to talk better to people and have conversations and to be able to guide conversations and speak up about certain things when I need to. Um, I would recommend looking into something like that because I had no choice and it helped me develop the skill while, again, even though I would still consider myself an introvert, I was able to at least have that skill. And I think that is very important to have when you're an adult. It was great at the job because I would always get, positive feedback from customers about their experience with me and, stuff like that. And it was encouraging because for someone that likes to keep to themselves, and even to this day, I'm always second guessing pretty much almost every interaction I have with any person ever. I don't know if that's normal, but I do. Pretty much everyone, sometimes even my husband, and he knows I'm an overthinker, so whatever. I feel like every time I have an interaction with somebody, immediately when it's done, I have to like play back what happened in my head, and I have to think, okay, what did I say? Did I say the right thing? Is this okay? Is this not okay? I'm always replaying in my mind, like, did I say the right thing? And did I speak loud enough? Did they hear me? Stuff like that. I'm always second guessing myself. And I thought after working a job like that on a daily basis, full time, 5 days a week, I worked at that company for 5 years, that I would change and I become extroverted and all this type of stuff. I was wrong. Okay. Because I was, introverted, my job was to speak with people all day and interact with them. By the time I would get home, I would have nothing left in me. No energy. I'd be exhausted. I'd be feeling like I ran miles upon miles. I always needed that time alone to refresh, replenish, and restore myself. And I feel like that is a key difference between introverts and extroverts. Introverts, I said this earlier, we thrive in our own thoughts and ideals, and most times in those alone times. And extroverts the opposite. They thrive being around people. They get their energy off of people and stuff like that. So I'd be at work all day, giving myself to people, just doing my job because I do everything at 100%, or at least I try to. And I would come home completely drained. And it was hard because on my off days, all I would want to do is sleep or just be by myself because I needed that time to regain my energy back. And I feel like that can be really hard when you're married. I remember when me and my husband got married, obviously I love spending time with my husband. He's my best friend. He will always be that. And we have so much fun together all the time. It doesn't matter what we're doing. But like that alone time is still very valuable to me. And at night before I go to bed, I'm like, oh, I need to do something for myself. I need to restore myself. I need to watch my ASMR. I need to, you know, do whatever, because that's how I reload. That's how I refresh. That's how my brain gets what it needs to kind of get going and to offload whatever is on it. And oh my God, it's harder when you even have a baby. Like my baby boy is almost 13 months old. He's always with me. I love him so much. And I love, being with him and spending time with him. And I love teaching him and just all the, amazing aspects of motherhood, and I bet any mom out there knows, like, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, like, you need that time to replenish after taking care of your baby all day. And it's just so important. Like, nap time is crucial. Okay? Like, right now, he's napping. Nap time is crucial. And it's interesting too when you become a mom because that in itself can be hard to find community and friends. I'm at an age where, people are having children or they don't, they're married or not. But, I have friends that have children, some don't. But making friends can be hard as a new mom and finding that community because, when you're a mom, you're super busy. You have this going on, you have that, and schedules and linking up and all that type of stuff. And it hasn't been very easy for me. And it also hasn't been easy because, me and my family, I've said this a million times, we moved to a new state, we moved across the country, and I feel like I have reached a whole new level of introversion. Like, what do they call it? Like on the video game, like when you reach like a certain, I can't think of it, like when you reach like a certain status, I am like that. Like, I did not think I could get more introverted, but I have. Okay. We have some family here, and but outside of them, I've been trying to get my feet wet and find community, especially at our church. Now that we've been going consistently, and it's hard when you don't know people in a new state and everything is different. And also, I moved from the north to the south. Like, even the culture is different. I love the culture of the south, by the way. Southern hospitality, I love it. But that's different. And I feel like ever since moving and having our baby boy, like, I have 100% crawled back into my little turtle shell. I've kept to myself. Like, I can't even, I get nervous to call and order food. Okay. And my husband makes fun of me. And I literally would be like, hey, can you call and order the pizza? And then he'll be like, why can't you do it? And I'll be like, oh, because I have to go to the bathroom. Hey, he picks on me for it. And, it's gotten to the point where, like, obviously when we first moved down here, I was pregnant and the pandemic was going on. I was working from home, so I wasn't really getting out, and I wasn't even, really getting out and going to, to church or anything like that. And then we had our baby boy, and then I'm trying to figure out life with a newborn and with a baby, and, just all this stuff going on. And then baby's growing up, and then the world's opening up, and now I'm trying to find community and friendships and stuff at church but I'm afraid to talk to anybody. I'm just being so honest, because again, when you isolate yourself as an introvert for so long, you may find yourself on the outside looking in. You may find yourself longing for that community because we're not designed to be alone. We're designed for community, we're designed for friendships. And I just feel like that's the way that we're wired, you know? I do love my alone time. I don't get much of it because I've got a little one, but I love it. And I do love staying to myself. But again, I know there are introverts out there that can resonate that we long for that community. And, I've been wanting to step out of my comfort zone and I'm working on it. It's not going that amazing, but I'm trying, okay? I'm trying. I feel like when it comes down to it, the reality of being an introvert, it has its tough moments, but it has its great moments too. And I feel like, we're a special breed of people. But I do feel like it isn't just about being quiet or not talking, like I mentioned. It isn't just about being shy. There's so much more to it. It's the way we live our lives. It's the way we have relationships with people, like I mentioned. It's the way how we develop friendships, how we obtain friendships, how we trust people. you know? And like that, paraphrasing definition said that I mentioned earlier, it's how we view life, how we process things, how we approach people, how we experience things. We may or may not be afraid to speak up or speak out, but sometimes we don't want to. And that's what I said earlier. It's about wanting to. And a lot of times I don't want to. Okay. We may not want to take control of things because it just isn't our desire to do so and be that leader and stuff like that. For a while I thought I wasn't an introvert because because of my job and stuff, I was developing that skill of communicating with people. I started to not be afraid to do that type of stuff. But still deep down, like I didn't want to. Like I wouldn't do it if it wasn't my job, you know? I wanted to stay to myself. I wanted to let somebody else take the reins. Some of the most naturally introverted people will also put themselves out there because they're just doing what they love to do. Like I love doing this podcast and I love talking. Like even though I'm an introvert, I love talking about deep stuff. That's why I was like, I'm gonna start a podcast because I want to talk. I do enjoy it because it's something I want to do, you know? But I also think that introversion isn't just surface level. I feel like, we naturally feel things a certain way, whether we act on them or not. And that's the key right there. How we feel and that desire, in my opinion, is just what it's all about. So if you're an introvert and you're listening to this and you resonated with anything that I mentioned, which I really hope that you did, I would love to hear your experience, whether you leave a comment or anything like that, or send a message on the Instagram page, which is at my so-called thoughts pod. Because this is something that I've just been really thinking about, like as I'm in this place in my life where I'm like, okay, I've gotten the hang of being a mom. I've been living in the state for over a year and a half. I got to get my life together. I can't just be in a hole all the time. I have to try to talk to people. I have to try to open up. I have to do what I can to try to branch out. And it's not about, going and trying to be extroverted. And that's where I was wrong. I was trying to be extroverted. I was trying to be likable, trying to be popular, all this type of stuff. And it failed every time. It's like, no, if I meet someone, I'm quiet and I'm to myself and this is who I am. Okay? Be yourself. If you're quiet, that's fine. I feel like we live in a world where sometimes, we're taught that you can't be quiet. You have to speak out all the time. And it's like, I don't want to. I have no desire. you know? It's okay to be introverted, but it's okay to be extroverted too. If you're extroverted, that's awesome. And honestly, some of my favorite people I've ever met, like my husband is an extrovert. I know he can say he has like introverted moments, but like there's so many people out there that are extroverted that are the funniest people ever. Like there would be people in my class, like just back in elementary school, middle school, even high school, they would just crack me up every day. Like they would just be so funny and I loved it. I loved it. But again, I was enjoying the sidelines. If you are an introvert, you don't have to change. You don't have to change. I think it's a good balance in the world. We've got extroverts and introverts, and I guess ambiverts if you feel like you're in the middle. Maybe I'm an ambivert. I don't even know, right? I don't even know if that's like an actual term. I just heard it. But at the end of the day, it is okay to be an introvert. It's okay to be an extrovert and learn from my mistakes. Just be yourself, You don't have to change who you are. But I think it is important, at least as an adult, that, if you want, I think knowing how to communicate is good because that's where I was wrong. I didn't know how to communicate with people. But working my job, I really learned how to communicate with people. And although I don't like to, and it's not my favorite thing to do because I like staying to myself, I am happy that I was able to develop that skill. And that's why I said it. Look, I don't know if this is good advice or not, but look into volunteering or look into a new position at your job, something that will have you have to communicate more, because then you could at least develop that skill. And again, you may not be as afraid because you have the skill. But if you made it to the end of this podcast, thank you so much for listening. The truth about being an introvert, I wanted to talk about it. I wanted to share it. And I hope that somebody out there resonates with this. I know it's got to be some introverts that do. Again, I would love to hear your opinion. Please leave a comment or review if you feel this way or anything like that. Check out the podcast on all streaming platforms: Anchor, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts. Also follow the Instagram page at My So Called Thoughts Pod. Again, that's at My So Called Thoughts Pod. Thank you so much for tuning in again. I pray that wherever you are in life, whether you're introvert or extrovert, that you will find peace in who you are, and you will know that you are enough and you don't have to change yourself for anybody. In Jesus' name, okay? But thank you so much for tuning in again. I hope wherever you are in your life, you're doing well and you're staying safe. And once again, this is Sunray. I'm out. Peace.